this thing before. Have you used Riverside?
I have. I was on a podcast December last year.
Yeah.
I thought the platform was great.
Yeah, no, honestly, it feels pretty professional. But ever since the upgrade, it says live, and I'm like, fuck, I don't know where this is going live to, but it definitely
It,
records, so it's all good.
yeah. Who's it
Um,
being streamed to?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know which accounts I've connected it to, but Angus, mate, so pumped to have you on the Scene podcast, mate. Highly requested. I threw it out on LinkedIn, and a lot of people slid into the DMs and said, you got to get Angus on. He's got some cool stories and how he thinks about social and community and brand will be a good one for the podcast. So pumped you here, mate, and yeah, stoked to chat.
Fantastic. Well, I owe all of my fans some money then for getting me on here. That's great.
Mate, I was just having a look at your LinkedIn. It feels like you've done a lot of different things in terms of career and different things that you've done. How did you get into what you do now in terms of like the socials, the content, the brand? Yeah, where did it all start?
Yeah, it's like a really long and winding journey, but I've told it a few times, so I'll give you the succinct version. But basically, in year 12, I just kind of had this like awakening in me of, you know, students didn't have as much voice as they wanted in high school with like, voicing opinions and things like that. And I had the force of personality to kind of negotiate with the teachers. And I kind of became this little politician figure in year 12. And I was like, maybe I want to go into local politics. And then I was like, actually, that's a terrible idea. Let's not do that. Because they mostly just do paperwork. It's not that fun. And I was like, okay, but I like movements. I like being an agent of change. I like supporting causes that I believe in. How do I make money from that? And then at the same time, when I went to university, I did my Bachelor of Arts creative writing major, and I'd been writing since grade two. And then year 10, 11, and 12, I got the literature award every year. So it's not just a passion, it was something I was genuinely good at. So I could do the speeches and I could write the speeches. Um, but what does that look like? And so towards the end of my writing degree, I realized that I was being educated to just do more education and not actually get a job with my writing. And so I kind of freaked out and I was like, well, like, I'm not going to get a great job. I could go work at Coles. I could do that, but I don't want to. So I started my first business, which was in events for creative writers. And that was independent publishing. It was open mic nights. It was community building, right? So I started in community and then did that for 2 years, published two anthologies. Altogether, we published over 200 Melbourne writers and some international. And it was a great movement. And that still runs now with the company that we worked with. But I exited that because I was like, there's actually a really obvious cap here that I can't make a living from. The demographic, the type of events, etc. And so I took all the skills I learned there, my writing, my humanities and history, passion as well, and my desire to inspire change in the world into Creative Frontier, a micro agency about brand strategy and storytelling for those people who are just like me, who have an amazing mission, but need help telling the story to make it catch on fire.
I love that. And one thing that you mentioned you're passionate about, creative writing. What makes a good like creative writer? Like, are there fundamentals to it? Like the structure, like how you think about things? Like, did that always come natural or did you have to learn a few things to become a good creative writer?
Yeah, that's a great question. Structure wise, there's lots to learn, and I learned that through, the years of high school and then university. But I think I was actually just born a storyteller. All of my family members on both sides, incredible storytellers, can captivate a room. I think I just learned from observation. But also, I wasn't conscious of these memories, but everyone who knew me as a baby growing up was like, if I heard somebody laughing in a different room because of a joke they'd said, I couldn't comprehend language at that time, but I would laugh, you know. So I had this innate ability of I can read social cues really well. And so I think that just made me as I learned to speak, right? I just became a very adaptive speaker, a little bit of a chameleon, and I can just kind of absorb and tell the right story for the right context.
And like the change in the movement thing, I feel like there's a lot of emotion involved with those types of things. So when you put out stuff and play in the comments and respond and stuff, like how deep does the intent have to be, right? Like you really have to think about what you say, hey, when it's things that you really passionate about, I suppose, or can cause like emotional reactions, I suppose. Like, how intentional do you have to be with that type of stuff?
Yeah, and you do have to be intentional, but you can't lose too much time on it. And so really you need to be doing a lot of front end work. That's like one-off stuff where you get that deep understanding with like a 2.5 hour conversation with your client at the start, right? And then you agree on the principles, you agree on the content pillars, the tone of voice, all that stuff, the type of words you use, and then you're off to the races. And that kind of the comment strategy, I don't advise clients go in and be like, I need you to edit that comment actually slightly because there's a million comments that need to fly out the door, and they are the sort of ground factory floor of your brand. And so they should be a bit rough. They should be a bit, honest. They should feel authentic. Save the polish for the posts. Let's just get something into the comments, get into the weeds. But it's very much informed by what are the existing brand guidelines as well.
I love that. I say that to a lot of people who don't know what to post on LinkedIn. It's like, well, you can play in the comments of people who you're inspired by or you can talk to and stuff. And I think it's a good way to like creatively express yourself when you kind of don't know where to start. And then you can like develop your sort of style of how you want to write or create. And it's just hard because do you feel like a lot of times like fear holds people back? I know it comes naturally to you, but when you're working with clients, it's like, well, if I put this out there, people are gonna, there's opinions, and then I have to do this. And do you have to coach a lot of your clients on that type of stuff?
Yeah, I do. I do. Less so for like working with TMC, right? Because it's marketing all over it. But even there are some post ideas that we've presented and that we've made, and it's gone really, really well. But Chanel has said like we've tried that post in the past and it didn't work for us, but I'm trusting you because you're a social media agency, right? And so that's that kind of honesty in a client agency relationship is super important because, well, I appreciate the trust, and also, that makes me want to do better as well. And that we can communicate maybe, hey, actually, I don't like this idea because of this, which just gives me an opportunity to go, fair enough. What about this, and this, right? Just a chance to have that chat. Um, I think though, when working with individual founders who are super cause focused, impact driven, they might be think money is a bit obnoxious and that's not the goal for them. But they've got to make money if they want to keep paying the marketing and things like that and their bills. There is some coaching there on actually refining their message because a movement, people want it to get as big as possible, but your movement just doesn't appeal to everyone. When you step out being led by your values, you've got a really big couple of differentiators immediately, and those are whatever the names of those values are, whether that's climate activism or the biggest marketing community.
Do you think too? I think like it's a good opportunity to like damage control, or if something comes up and you're like, oh, you don't really want that, but like there's an opportunity to flip the script or to respond in a way where people can see, because it's public, you know what I mean? Everyone can see. Like I feel like a lot of mistakes brands make are deleting comments or hiding things that, don't, but like you can really give yourself a good opportunity if you respond in the right manner, especially like on your page where the community is largely there for you. I think like a lot of brands and people miss that out of fear, maybe.
Yes, and I just don't think you should ever delete a comment. I think you should, if the comment went down poorly and you feel like you should apologize, edit the comment and say, hey, apology, or do a post about it, right? But make it part of the dialogue. It's a continual conversation when you're online and you're making content and you're in the comments or you're on a post. Don't stop the conversation because as soon as you do that, it tells everybody else who is, on the journey with you that you are actually going to exercise that power of silence, over the dialogue. And so how much then do they want to talk to you?
And what about like structuring content? How much do you like to plan versus if something pops up, we can get something up? Like, is it part like leaving room for those things? Like, if something does happen and it's trending to be, because like social is like an immediate thing as well. Like, as much as we like to plan, there's things that pop up in our world that we might want to lend our voice to. Like, how do you go about structuring up like a content plan?
Yeah, definitely. You have a few like pillars. They're not necessarily on set days, but you have a few like content pillars that you're trying to tick every week because they work and there's enough stuff around that pillar because it's like general words like infographic, for example. maybe today will be an infographic every week, but that could be on anything. And that gives it that flexibility to be current and modern. So we just create a plan, absolutely, but it's more like a framework plan that we then slot ideas into, less of, oh no, we've got to come up with an entirely new concept, every single day, because that's not feasible. So yeah, that's what we do. It's a bit of strategy, but it's built in flexibility.
What about like gut versus data? Like you're thinking, hey, this might not have been done before or not in this way versus like listening to the feedback of previous stuff that you've done before. Like, how do you mix those two together?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big lead by the gut kind of guy. I think, screw the data, to be honest. But the data is great for reporting and it does tell you objectively what is being engaged with. But within all of that, there's so many nuances to dig into that you can kind of almost find whatever answer you're looking for in the data. Whereas I think at the end of the day, and that's important to look at, but at the end of the day, if you don't like the content that's going out, eventually the audience will catch on that you're just not invested in your own brand either. And so you've got to take some chances pretty routinely, I think, to make sure you are feeling aligned with your brand, with the content that you're putting out, because that authenticity is what started it all. And it's really important you don't kind of disconnect yourself from that. Does that make sense?
100%. And I feel like sometimes like putting frameworks around authenticity can be a bit hard. It's like it's hard for me because I feel like I'm not really a big planner. I'm really just what I feel and I'll just put it out there at that time. And it's kind of like that Twitter style type of content. Like I do that on LinkedIn. I feel that works the best for me because like there's so many tools now. Obviously with AI, you can just, you can say, like you can get the right information and like prompt it however you want. But it's like, it needs to be you that's saying stuff or the brand or like that's your unique tone of voice. And I know you can like set up tone of voice and things in AI and stuff like that. But I still think like the best writing and creative that I've done is just straight from the head, rather than just trying to just like refine and refine and refine where it just becomes, you lose that edge. And I think like authenticity is a hard one, isn't it? Because like, how do you capture that and scale that? I think that's the hard part, hey?
And I think like what you were just saying there about, getting AI to try and refine something and whatnot. What's her name? Is it Laura Acosta? Was it Laura Acosta? She's one of the biggest like, influencers on LinkedIn and stuff like that. Very successful, a lot of great advice. And she just leaked a ChatGPT plugin to like refine your LinkedIn profile and stuff like that. So I was like, let's play around. I went in, hey, go over my about section, right? Because it needs a little bit of work. But then it did it, and it works if that's what you want your profile to look like, of, very, ticking all the boxes for people to understand you, or specifically for the algorithm to understand you and send you to the right people. But for me, I was like, this just isn't a story, and I'm a storyteller. So this works for somebody else. It doesn't work for me. And on that note, it's one of those things where like, that could maybe be better for you in the short term, but is it your brand? And for me, everything comes back to brand. It's exponential growth, unlike sort of short-term sales advertising that's like going to get the sales, going to close the deals, but it's not going to build long-term growth. It's not going to secure the deals that are going to come 6 to 12 months down the pipeline. So for me, I just put a uncompromising emphasis on, is the brand right?
And I think like you're starting to see now people deliberately doing spelling mistakes and that. And I don't think that's the answer. I just think like you can't not it like you can say I want to write like Stephen King, you know what I mean, and write it like that, and it just you can have something structurally really cool, but it's just I don't know, like I'm not a 10 out of 10 writer, I might be a 6 if I'm lucky or a 7, and like that's okay, you know what I mean? It's like it's more about the message and the brand. Like when different opportunities come up, like personal example of like going on live TV and it's like, all right, we have to be this polished version of whatever. And we weren't, and then the best feedback that we got from that was like, you guys are 100% yourself. Like you didn't try and polish it up or try and be like TV ready. It was just like, you guys you said a few silly things or whatever. And that's what we expect from you a little bit. And that was more like, oh, that's what we wanted. You know what I mean? We didn't want to be
Yeah.
these super professional people with all the right answers,
Yeah, and there's a great way to reflect that in writing, and it doesn't have to be spelling mistakes because at the end of the day, a spelling mistake is actually still just unprofessional. So don't do it. But what that's doing is that's compensating for they haven't got the ability yet to actually write authentically because there is an art to it. And we could talk all day about AI tells or whatever, but the truth is everything that AI has pulled from existed before AI, and there were people using it poorly before, and AI has just seen that as the majority use case and absorbed it into the way that it writes. So when all of a sudden, one of my favorite writing mechanisms of it's not this, it's that, because that's a highly effective way of writing a thing, but now suddenly that's the only way that it gets written and it's gross and boring. I immediately just started writing it slightly differently. You just have to adapt the format because the format's not wrong, but a part of it is now way too cliche. And thankfully, I had a great teacher back in high school who instilled in me, maybe a little too zealously, cliches are bad. Don't use them. That's not completely true, but for the most part, yeah, because most people can't use a cliche effectively. So don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I think you see it in music too. Like bands, when they first start, or artists, they might mimic a lot of what their favorite artists do, like their inspirations, and it feels like the same chord progression, the same things, and then eventually it turns into their sound or they're finding their sound. So I think that that kind of expresses itself in writing and brand as well. Like when people are building businesses and how they talk about it, it's like our competitors are all talking like this, and then it's like, oh, but how much do we want to zag when they're zigging? You know what I mean? And is it obvious that we're trying to
Yeah.
be the opposite? And it's like I think you can overthink stuff as well. Hey, when it's just like sometimes ignorance is bliss and just going in there and just getting amongst it, not thinking too much about it. I think really what I've seen from experience works really well because it's like you're not overthinking it. It's just you. It's like you haven't absorbed all the other stuff. So it's like if you would just come in, this is what it'd be like anyway. And I see like really good results in terms of that way. Is that something that you've seen and how you
Yes.
recommend?
And I think I'll tell you where I learned that skill because I think it's relevant because a lot of people in this industry have not grown up on farms and stuff like that, which I did. And when you're on the farm, all right, you're out in the hills, you're chasing off a cow or sheep that have broken through the fence. It's you, it's the wind, and no reception. You know, you just have to make calls. You have to be confident with your ability to make the right call. And if you make the wrong call, you have to be confident that you can fix it because it's you and it's the animal that needs to be saved and put back in the enclosure before the storm comes or before it's nighttime and the foxes come and get it. There's no time to like call the stakeholder, ask the board if this is the right decision, or hey, can I sell off some stock because I need some extra capital to make up a loss. You just have to make the call. And then you get back to the farmhouse and people go, what happened? And you tell it, and they have to trust that, well, you were there and they weren't. And so that you made the right call. And running a business, building a brand, exactly the same thing. There are times when it's just you, out in the wilderness chasing that goal, that metaphorical animal. Just make the call. To be honest, you just got to have that courage to do it.
I think too in social, like the comparison and competitors, and it's always just like looking at what others are doing and like, don't be Microsoft, be Apple. You know what I mean? In a sense where it's just like, I don't know. That's why I see like the best founders, like ignorance is bliss a little bit. Like they come in a bit like if they knew what they were in for, they probably wouldn't do it, but they've just got this like optimism and energy and enthusiasm. And it's like, that works, in a weird, weird way. And it's like, and it's hard. Like doing this stuff is hard. Like what's one thing running a business well and ticking all those boxes, but how do you present to the public? How do you tell the stories? Like that's where you see like a lot of businesses, they just don't know how to tell the story, but they have a good business. Hey, and it's like,
Yes.
well, you just need to do, and vice versa. There's a lot that can tell a good story, but the business might be shit. And you're going, oh, you know what I mean? Like you really need to back it up with what you're doing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Your core thing.
Yeah. There is two sides to every coin, isn't there? But I think like where I come in, I'm able to help with you've got a great business or a great idea, but you haven't got the execution of the story very well. I can't help you if it's the other way around. I'm not a product, designer expert or a business fixer, but definitely the story. We can definitely do that. And it just the beautiful thing of a story that lands right with the right people. Doesn't have to land with everyone, just the right people. It just amplifies and people buy in, right? It's really important that when you're telling the stories on social media, you're creating buy-in for the people who are watching and liking and commenting and reposting. Give them a chance to own a small corner of the brand. because they become champions for it elsewhere. A big thing I talk about with clients is story channels. Where is your brand talking on your behalf without you needing to be there? And how is that happening? And tracking, is it through articles that other people are writing? Is it because somebody loves your brand colors and they're like, this is my inspiration for everything I do, and they don't even work for you, right? And we need to find a way to track those things. And if they don't exist, we need to find a way to get those story channels activated and started, because we've got to outsource the PR, we've got to outsource the organic reach, all that stuff.
What about the difference between long form storytelling and short form? Like obviously on TikTok, you need to just capture the attention or people won't see it. But then again, I see some people who don't do that and their whole brand is like the longer form stuff, and the people who are following and engaging, they're there for that reason. Like you don't need to capture everyone. You just need to capture your audience, So that
Yes.
could be through, you don't have to always do these like quick 3-second hook things or whatever, because like for me, I like longer form clips. I don't want this like quick little thing straight away where I'm like, oh, I just feel like it's fast food. You know what I mean? Like
100%,
give
100%.
me a roast.
Yeah, yeah. I'm long form. I have a friend who we work in similar spaces, but like different niches, and he asked me over a coffee, "Does long form like work for you? I notice your posts are a bit long." He kind of asks politely, and I go, "Don't worry, they're working." And then a week later, I write a long post about the capital gains tax. It blows up. And that was a long post, but people read it and it exploded. It's actually just about, is it worth reading? Like, to be totally brutally honest, is it worth reading? Because if it is, they'll stick around. If I stuck with the like, here's 3 quick tips, that's just not my brand. And you can tell an excellent story in 3 sentences, but those posts are not telling a story. They are selling you something.
Yeah.
So
And two, I think like the benefits of long form, like having a podcast and people getting to know who you are and how you engage, it just makes everything easier. And it's a longer way to get to where you want to be, but I feel like it's deeper. But then again, like I like distilling like long form chats into like key takeaways and things like that, because I know people like to absorb stuff that way, but it's like the balance, especially with brands. It's like, how much long form should we do? How much short form should we do? Or should we do not one of them? You know what I mean? How do you like sit down with a client and go through all this stuff? Like what should they do? Is it just situational? Everyone's different, or is it just more of like a format?
no, it's very planned. We start with the core why of everything, the mission, the problem they want to solve with marketing, the goals that the business has long term and short term, uh, who they are selling to, what are their ideal customer profiles, about 3 of them, and really digging into very specific people. Like, let's imagine that you're an ideal profile for my business. I'd go, okay, what does Lachlan Bradford do? How old is he? What's his occupation? All that stuff. Really delving into the psychographics and what platforms they're on. And then we go into key differentiators and all that stuff, right? All that business analysis stuff, which doesn't sound like marketing, but it directly affects which platforms we should even start to be on. Um, you know,
And what about like return on investment? I see a lot of people, it's like the millennials or the older people running the business. It's like, yeah, all this is good, but what's the ROI? And I think like a lot of brand is, it's influence over time, and it's built from relationships and trust. So you can't just click that overnight. So it's like, how do you like those stakeholders? How do you engage with those types of people who are like, yeah, we know it's good, but like, what does the dollar return on this post or this strategy? Like, how do you go about those combos or coaching people in those combos?
yeah, yeah, because I think I have had a few of those chats of like they're just genuinely curious, first of all. So number one, don't take offense, right? Don't take offense when they ask, so how are you actually contributing to the business through the work you do? And don't say vibes as an answer. But the ROI brand, first of all, if they're working with you on brand, then they already understand it's a long-term game. But in that initial consultation, you just set those really clear short-term goals and be realistic about what those goals can be, with a bit of room to shoot past them. But tying the ROI, at least for the first 6 months of an engagement, in that first long meeting is really important for relationship success, because you agree on what success looks like. I don't head into client relationships just kind of vaguely going, we'll do this, this, and this. And I did that at the start with my first few clients, and I realized this doesn't work actually because they're not sure what to tell me to do. I'm kind of leading the discussion, telling them what I think I should be doing, and they're saying, yes, sounds good. But then once we kind of tick that goal off, they're waiting for me to figure out what I need to tell them for me to keep doing to justify me being here. And that's exhausting. I shouldn't have started that way, right? So just like clear it up at the start. It's like entering into a long-term, romantic relationship. What are your needs and wants? What are my needs and wants? Okay, perfect. I can meet these ones and I can't meet those ones. And if they're happy with that list, they'll pay you.
Yeah. And metrics, like how do you go about which ones are important, and which ones to not worry about? Like we're starting to see now people saying vanity metrics like likes and followers and more like watch time and shares and stuff. Is that what you sort of think as well, or is there other areas that you like to measure?
Yeah, there's other areas that I like to measure because I work with very values-led, impact-led brands, whether it's a founder or a community. We want to know who's saving the posts, who's reposting, are they sending the posts to people in their network? Likes are great, but likes are the most useless one, to be honest, because there's always more people who see the post than like it. So like it's less impactful. Commenting is great as well though. So those other ones, I'm much more interested in those other ones because that's very active engagement from the people to the content, and it signifies how it's resonating. Like if you're getting LinkedIn's, I have 45 saves of my own content on LinkedIn. So people out there are reading my stuff and saving it for later. I don't know if they're reading it later, but they've saved it because they go, I might come back to this, and that's amazing. So those interactions are deepening their loyalty to your brand because they're going, actually, I want to sink some time into this. I want to make sure I can find this later. And in the wave tsunami of content, if that's how they feel about your content, that's a win.
I love that. And that's where I think long form can win, because I just look at my own behavior and I'm like, I save stuff that I don't have time to read now, but I'm very interested in reading. So I feel like saving that for later when I've got time to consume the whole thing because I know it's important, I think is a good way. But like, do you think about building for the algorithm or building for the audience? Like there's what, like for saves, like the first thought in the creative is like, all right, I'm going to make this so that this gets a bunch of saves, or is it more just like compelling content that I'm pretty sure will get some saves?
Yes, some really practical stuff around there. Like the type of work, the content that gets saved is educational primarily, right? It's educational or it's a hot take. My hot take on the capital gains tax got like 12 saves. Probably because they were like, I want to circle back to this later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're writing an educational piece about, ways to make your content pop, how to write a good hook, or, what AI you should be using for the type of marketing work you do, those will get saved, because they're like, actually, I'm gonna circle back to this because I have that problem. Or totally removed from being useful in any way, shape, or form. When you write really fun socials content, people save that because it's a good creative example of what they might want to do in their job, right? So we did a what kind of coffee you drink based on your marketing role for TMC, and it did really good. It had almost as many comments as interactions, which is a very high comment ratio. That's great because people were like, I feel so seen, and so people save those sorts of posts too.
And what about like setting boundaries? Have you pushed yourself to the limit where you're consuming too much or you're working too hard, or like I feel like sometimes is it infobesity or whatever when you're just like down the rabbit hole consume, because I love that shit. I love learning, but then it gets to a point where my brain is fried and I'm like, I don't know if I can absorb any more information. I need to put some boundaries in place, especially with social, like the pressure, if you put a post out and especially on Instagram and that, like that if people are commenting, you're commenting back and you know what I mean? Like you're real present when you're there. But have you ever experienced any type of like burnout or stuff like that?
Yeah, I think, look, I tell you what, I haven't experienced burnout since university, where I burnt out 6 times in 3 years. And those are good learnings, but I haven't burnt out since. But I think, and I'd love to unpack that more, but I'll answer your question about like getting info drain, info out. Um, for me, because it's super important to be doing research constantly in this role, but I just am subscribed to the agencies and podcasts and thought leaders that I believe to be right and that have great topical advice, and those are the only ones I read. I don't get drowned in the sea of like everybody else who's talking about it, unless there's something really quite interesting. But you just got to be focused, and you just got to trust that these experts you're investing time in are the right ones, and reevaluating when that changes.
I think too, like with LinkedIn, you can do that. You know, the ones that you engage with are the ones that pop up in the feed the most. And I think like I'm starting to see myself like, you know, I'll go on Instagram and there's all this stuff going on in the world at the moment. And while I'm keen to keep an eye, I feel like it's just bringing my energy down, or just I'm becoming negative, and you know, and it's like, oh, just like we've only got one life. I don't really want to be angry all the time. So it's like making it like a point to get rid of those things or block those things, not to ignorance is bliss, but more just like for my own sanity of like, I want to be growing and learning and glass half full. I don't want to be angry at the world, or, you know, I just feel like you
Yeah,
can get really bitter when you're online a lot and the algorithm changes, you know?
I 100% agree, and I think you've got to do what's right for you personally, right? Just first of all for your mental health and things like that. But for me, I've tried to step away from it before, like step away from being, you know, deeply aware of politics and history and patterns, societal patterns, and blah blah blah. But I just keep coming back to it, and so I had to learn. Okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I don't go too deep into this? And for me, like, yeah, I like to joke. You know that line in the first Avengers movie where Hulk is like, I'm always angry. That's my secret, right? That's kind of my secret too, is I am always angry, like inside, but it's positive energy because it's transferred into, I know that I'm building something with this energy. I'm building the tools to fix my corner of the world that I live in. I'm building the tools to help change makers and community brands improve the lives of the people in their sphere of influence. And so I'm translating that energy, because anger is a energy that you can use into something productive. And so for me, that's how I've found a way to kind of just channel it so that it doesn't stay in my brain. It's being used in the actions that I take day to day. It's like a constant way of kind of getting it out of the system.
And I suppose movements and stuff always like that's change, you know what I mean? So there has to be like some strong emotion attached to it. And I suppose like your experience will help guide those people to channel it in a good way, and use that rage to like action things and push things forward. So
Yeah.
100% like love that. And I feel like you're probably the perfect person to like give advice to those types of people, you know, because I think working with like people who love like who are doing movements and stuff is a lot different than like a brand, or you know what I mean? It feels a bit more
Yeah.
personal. It feels a bit more emotional.
We're not exactly selling luxury watches, right? We're selling, how to save, the endangered frog species or the bogong moth, or we're selling, are you lonely? Right? This community could fix that, you know. We're selling those sorts of solutions which are really human-centered solutions, which are the only ones I really want to be part of selling, to be honest. I don't need another Amazon order or, a Temu, whatever. Yeah. And I just think for creatives, especially like ourselves who end up in marketing, we can take ourselves and the work we do a bit more seriously by choosing serious clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I think loneliness is a big one. Like coming into this industry and immersing myself, I feel like we're very super connected in this industry, but I feel like there's a lot of loneliness as well because we are online. It is the comparison. It is seeing what others are doing, and why aren't I doing that? Or you know, like I just feel like that brings that up to the surface a lot more. Where I suppose in other industries and other areas of work, it's probably not as prevalent or you know in your face. So that's why I think like having strategies around that, like building the scene community around just connection, you know, just like people understanding kind of what you're going through in your world. Because I think sometimes you can come home from work, your partner, your friends, they might not necessarily know all the stuff in your world. So it's like, it might be hard to explain, but to have people who understand your work and can bounce off, who might not necessarily be in the weeds with that project that you're doing, but can be there to support and listen, I suppose, is like a really important part of like making sure that we all don't burn out and go in the wrong direction, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've done my fair share of lone wolfing it with, the work I do, being an entrepreneur, all that sort of stuff. And I've come from a very rough environment that encouraged, just be an independent, self-sufficient, young person. And so I'm more familiar taking that harder path than I am being connected in a community. I am in communities, but I often find I'm very good at carving my own space out within those community spaces, and I become like an island I'm still social, I got friends, but like I exist in a different part of the community, if that makes sense. And then even with, my wife, who also works in marketing and branding, um, I just need to, I've had to learn to just rely on her because that's what she's there for each other, right? We help each other. So just to connect in, plug back in to support has been a learning for me, I would say. Yeah.
I love that, mate. And we always end our episodes with a fast five. So super hard questions that we want your first thoughts on. If you're ready to go, we can get stuck into it.
Yes, and
All right. What's your coffee order?
flat white. Actually, sorry, no, I make my coffee, so it's 4 shots of coffee every morning.
How many?
In one coffee.
So is it one throughout the day, like one coffee with the 4 shots, or are you rocking the caffeine all day?
No, I take one in the afternoon or the evening, so it's 8 shots in total. Yeah, a bit hardcore.
No, I love that. I love that. What's your death row meal?
Death. You know what? The Buddy Burger from Schnitz is the best thing on the planet. I would eat
Underrated.
that.
People
Yeah.
sleep on the Buddy Burger. What's your favorite song at the moment?
Uh, Hans Zimmer. Anything from the Dune soundtrack.
Yeah, he's coming out, I think.
He is. He is.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was like, "Hey, we have to go," and I was like, "I'm in."
I looked at the live stuff on YouTube. I was like, this guy is incredible. Love that answer. What about your biggest pet peeve?
Yeah, I've got so many. But the biggest one is trams and trains. If you're outside walking on, just let the people inside come off first, please. That's all I'm asking. Don't
Yeah.
barge on.
Oh man, it's like those people on the plane who get up straight away as soon as it lands. It's like, bro,
Yeah, yeah.
come on.
Please, like, just think of other people.
Yeah, yeah. And last one, favorite TV show slash movie.
Ooh, favorite movie is Gone with the Wind, which is from a very long time ago, but also Lord of the Rings. So yeah, epics. I like the epic genre.
I like that because you get a few movies. You know what I mean? Like you don't just get the one, you get the whole trilogy or the whole series, which
Yeah.
is always nice. Angus, mate, this has been awesome. We've got to get you back on for round two. I love this chat, and really appreciate you jumping on and sharing your wisdom, mate.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime. I want to hear some of your wisdom as well next time.